Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order with a reminder that the actions taken at this table will focus on our students and their achievement. Item B on our agenda is a public hearing, and I have something I need to read, a statement I need to read. I have in my possession an affidavit of publication showing that the notice of time and place of hearing for the proposed issuance of approximately $10 million of school infrastructure sale, service, and use tax revenue bonds. This notice was published in the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier on August 23, 2019. The board will now hold a hearing. If there's anyone that would like to come and speak in regards to this, if they would just step up to the mic, please, and introduce yourself. Hearing and seeing none, we will close this hearing. Thank you. Moving on now to the consent agenda, item C on the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Jenny Leeper did review the bills and called me and said that that she approved them. So any other questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Public comment.
There was not any requested.
Okay, thank you. Moving on now to communications. Janelle Darst.
Good evening. Since I was here last, we have started the school year, and it's been a great start to the school year so far. I'm just going to talk about a few things in the report tonight. First thing, just kind of want to mention, this photo shows one of the many great activities the students have been doing since the beginning of the school year. This was a breakout. Our instructional technology coaches have been doing these across the district, and it's, I would say, basically like an escape room in a box. They have little puzzles and things they have to figure out in a time frame they have to do it in. So I would definitely encourage everyone to check out the social media across all the buildings to see some of those things that are happening. One of the great things to talk about is our enrollments continuing to grow. We had 5,527 students, K-12, on the first day of school. It's 107 more than last year, and that does not count the over 160 preschool students that we have in our buildings. Just a reminder, October 1st will be the actual count date by the state, so this could fluctuate, but based on the first day of enrollment, we're very confident we're going to have good growth this year. Also, just you can search the hashtag CF Schools First Day on social media to see all those posts. The buildings did a great job of keeping track of all those with using that hashtag. And this just shows our very first Orchard Hill preschool classroom. This was the area of the building that was renovated to then accommodate having a preschool classroom at that building that was open in time for preschool. So that's a great photo to show those new students in that building. Just this morning, we kicked off planning and discussions for the new high school with kind of our Insight Week 2.0, so to speak. The week includes meetings with every department in the high school, all the staff, as well as community members, representatives from UNI and Hawkeye Community College, the City of Cedar Falls, and CFU. Lots of great discussion, lots of great thoughts and ideas and opinions, and they'll continue to collect that throughout the week, and then that'll kind of be the beginning of our process as we as they design and we plan for the new high school. So it was a really exciting morning and really exciting this whole week. Just wanted to do a quick shout out to Matt Johnson, our high school volleyball coach, had his 500th career victory at a tournament this past weekend. It might have been 2 weekends ago, but congratulations to Matt. The volleyball team is currently ranked first in the state and continue to have a great start to a great season, as do really all of our athletic teams across the board in the fall have had great seasons to start. So it'll be great to watch all of those. Did want to kind of do a quick mention about the CAPS program. This is a couple students, Frank and Jacob. They're working for Curb Tender right now after being recruited to the company after participating in the summer CAPS program. They're reverse engineering an arm for a garbage truck based on an older product by that company. This summer was the first time we had the summer CAPS program offered. It was a great opportunity because we have lots of students that want to take the CAPS program, but based on their scheduling and interest, either in music band or other things, that's really kind of hard to fit in that 3-section in their day. So students were able to take this over the summer, and it was a great experience. It was also the first summer CAPS program that has been offered across the CAPS network across the country. So it's kind of, in essence, a prototype for the country to see how it would work out. And as you can tell by the experience of those students, it was a great experience across the board. Also, just wanted to mention that our CAPS program is working with Columbus High School and Jessup High School to launch their CAPS programs. The two schools, of course, will partner with businesses at off-site locations, and they'll be doing the real-world career experiences. And Jessup is piloting it on behalf of the Cedar Valley Northeast, which is a consortium of districts that look at opportunities for students as far as ways that they're able to collaborate. And real quick, don't forget all the social media ways you can find out what's happening. Any questions?
Thank you, Janelle. Questions for Janelle? It's exciting to be back in school.
This wouldn't be directly to Janelle, but, you know, the rough math is that we're up about 2%, and I know our funding follows, it's a year lagging from what we need at the time, obviously. But my question would be, would our full-time equivalency of certified staff go up in correspondence, or has it gone up this year about approximately 2%?
It has. We have increased FTEs going into the school year. I'm not sure exactly the overall percentage, but I think we're up maybe 3 to 4 staff members just to cover the needs, and then the growth areas that we knew and anticipated would grow. We're always that 1 year in arrears for the funding, so that's always a challenge, and part of that's where our cash balances will ebb and flow throughout the year, but certainly we have increased staff, which is a positive sign as we continue to grow and add programs.
And I know it's always a challenge to guess essentially which buildings, which classrooms, which grade levels will have those changes. What does our typical class size for, say an elementary homeroom or a high school math, are we pushing some bigger numbers? Do we have the capacity, the physical space to accommodate that?
Yeah, we have the physical space. We're watching numbers. There's 4 or 5 sections across the district that we're watching pretty carefully right now, trying to provide some extra supports, be it para supports, maybe some reading sports, some other adults classroom supports to help break down some of those larger groups into maybe smaller segments. As we continue to watch and see, because we have some areas of our community that we anticipate and know will continue to grow. We've talked about mid-year December graduates, some other options, just because you don't know what those fluctuations look like throughout the year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Andy, following up on that a little bit, do you know the breakdown in this increase of new students entering kindergarten versus families moving into town and entering at, mid-levels?
So one of our new programs this year actually is a kinder prep program. So those students that are eligible for kindergarten are 5 years old, but maybe not be, parents might not think they're ready, or maybe it's age. It could be a lot of different factors. So when you add our kinder prep students in with our kindergartners, that is actually one of our larger sections right now, about 445 students that are in kindergarten. Our largest section is actually in 7th grade for a grade level. We do know that when we broke down just our number of new students versus students that might have just moved around in the community, those majority of those 107 are new students, new families to our community, which is really exciting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks, Janelle. Moving on now to item F on the agenda, the Secretary's July financial report, and Danelle has given us an updated version at your location, so that's the part she's going to be reviewing.
Correct. In reviewing, I located a typo in the beginning balances on our general fund and in our capital projects. So wanted to make sure that you had the correct report in front of you. If we can go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint, great. For July, for revenues for our general fund, we had $561,000. We had expenditures of $3.7 with a ending balance of $6.7 million. If we go to our management fund, again, we had revenues of about $3,000. We had expenditures of $610,000 with an ending balance of $439,000. For our capital projects, this was again one of the errors in which we found at the beginning balance. Our revenue is $198. Our expenditures were $4,000. Again, our ending balance is $132,000. This will be ending here shortly as we finish up our projects throughout the district for Aldrich, Orchard Hill, and North Cedar. Next one, which is our lot and our save. So our revenues are $425,000, our expenditures are $411,000. You'll notice that there was not a transfer out, which is normal within this fund. It was missed in error, and it will be, there'll be a double transfer in August for this particular one. But our ending balance is $6.9 million with restricted funds of $995,000. The next, which is our plant and physical plant and equipment. Our revenue is $19,000, expenditures $144,000, a total balance of $3.9 million. Next, which is our debt service. Our revenues are $9,000. Our expenditures were $0. Again, we have expenditures twice a year from this particular fund, which had an available balance of $23,000. Student activity. We had revenues of $34,000, expenditures of $47,000, for an available balance of $548,000. For our trust and agency fund, we had revenues of $51,000, expenditures of $9,400, with a total available balance of $315,000. In our nutrition enterprise fund, we had revenues of $22,000, we had expenditures of $26,000, with a total available balance of $850,000. In our coffee shop, we had revenues of $472. We had expenditures of $0, with an available balance of $5,399. And finally, with our River Hills Consortium, and as a reminder, this is a flow-through which we work with Central Rivers AEA. Our revenue is $389,000, expenditures of $93,000, with an available balance of $354,000. But again, these dollars will be expended and paid to Central Rivers. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Danelle? Hearing none, we'll put the Secretary's financial report on file for audit. Thank you, Danelle. Moving on to item G on the agenda, the approval of the construction manager agreement. Dr. Petit and Danelle, you're going to play tag?
Yes, I believe so. So this is something certainly is kind of a final culmination. We went through an RFP process, a request for a proposal, roughly 18 months ago as we went through pre-bond to be able to look at costing and making sure that the constructability of our design as we go through the project and the estimated projects maximize cost and square footage and efficiency. We are recommending through that process of RFP Story Construction. Story's been on board again through the pre-bond process, worked with the design team with school board members. They have done a very nice job trying to focus on the project not only through pre-bond but now as we go into post-bond and constructing and design development of the building to make sure again they have that construction viewpoint, the builder viewpoint to look at this as we work with staff, work with our design team to make sure that the building is efficient and can be built for the right costs that we've anticipated and that we have budgeted. We do know that through this construction manager process, we don't have the capacity as a school district to be able to oversee such a large project, hence a construction manager. They will have anywhere from 2 people at the start of construction on site day to day, and once construction starts in kind of the heart of the process, they'll have 5 full-time individuals on site. We do know that because we do have a construction manager, that's going to allow us to not bid this out in one large project, similar to what we've done with our elementary work, where you have a general contractor that bids it out and then kind of hire subs on their own. The construction manager will help place bid packages, potentially upwards around 20 bid packages. So we have much more fluidity and hopefully cost savings that are attributed to that as well as you look at grading and then electrical and sub work. So we're excited by that option and opportunity to have that as well. The construction manager cost is 1.7% of the construction cost versus not the project cost. And we know that over the next 4.5 years, roughly, that is going to be a great addition to our design team.
Questions for Dr. Petit?
So so with other high school projects or large construction projects that have occurred within school districts within the state, can you give an idea? I mean, because we really have two options. One, we can hire a general contractor. We can bid this out as all one package, and then the general contractor would take all the financial responsibility to find the subs that they thought were necessary to implement the project, versus the model that's being recommended, which is to hire a construction manager. Can you kind of, other Ankeny, Waukee, other school districts that have, can you talk a little bit about what system they've used?
Yes, I think the best comparison right now is Ames are going through. They just recently bid their project. They have a construction manager. It's not a new model. Typically, I think what's come about over time is making sure that you kind of have an integrated design process, so your construction managers on early in the project, hire them at the same time you hire your architectural firm. So there truly is kind of a design team concept, because we do know that sometimes when you start talking design or philosophical approaches to what classrooms could look like or could be, having that contractor, that construction person in the room allows that to have maybe a little bit more lower level conversation with, ducting or wall construction or angles of walls. So we have seen, just as we have talked to other districts, that a construction manager, because of the efficiencies that people see from working with that design team early on, construction manager, architect, staff, that they see quite a bit of benefits with cost savings as far as efficiencies.
Thank you.
Andy, so you said that they've been on board in the kind of planning phases early on. Have Story Construction and Envision Architecture worked on many projects together that would kind of model what that working relationship looks like? It's going to be an important working relationship.
Yeah, they have, and I'm just looking out in the audience, and they're both shaking their head, so I'm going to try to answer this one for them. If I get it wrong, shake your head no, and please come to the podium. But they have. It is a small state, but when we went through the RFP process, that wasn't one of the priorities as far as have you worked with the architectural firm prior, because we wanted to get the best firm that we could to be able to maximize the dollars to show whether or not they have produced savings over time based on taking what was a concept to be able to test it and then be able to show did they maximize square footage and did they come in on budget or under budget as far as what the expectation was. And that was part of their RFP process, to be able to look at that and then be able to call out on people to figure, or on companies that submitted for the RFP, and they certainly came out on top. Their costing and their proposal as far as pre-bond work and then post-bond work and then construction work, with a number of people on site, the overall cost and what they've shown for savings in other districts certainly allowed them to come out on top.
Good question.
And beyond cost savings, would there be any other disadvantages of doing business this way? I take it our input would still be valued and taken as part of as our vision of this high school and those sorts of things?
So I've said this a couple different times, and they work for us. This is part of that process. So they are our advocate, and they are on site with up to 5 people during the construction phase, with people that understand what it means to be a construction manager, overseeing multiple bid packages and making sure that things are done by spec the right way. Mm-hmm. So yes, that still allows us flexibility and the ability to help, you don't want to say control some of the design aspects, but certainly they are there to make sure that things are done per the way that our staff has had input, our community has input, our parents have had input, our students have had input, to make sure we get the building that we need and want for the next 50 to 70 years.
Good questions. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Cedar Falls Board of Education approve the construction manager contract with Story Construction of Ames, Iowa for work associated with the new high school as presented.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sorry.
It's been moved and seconded by Susie. No? Seconded by Dr. Heisterkamp. Okay, fine.
Let's go.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on now to the approval of the architect's contract, item H on the agenda. back to the dream team here.
So this is another exciting next phase of the high school project. And again, thank you to our community for approving the bond referendum here in June. So this is the final component of the design team with our architect. Roughly now 5.5 years ago, we went through an RFP process to select an architect as we went through the first discussions and phasing of what a new high school could look like for Cedar Falls. We're very excited that through that process, Envision is the architectural team that has been working for multiple years on some of the pre-bonding components, now working with us on the post-bond and certainly the construction process. I know they've been very mindful and have said that they want to make sure that their base bid comes in underneath a lot of the other high school projects across the state, and we can't thank them enough for that because of their not only investment, I think, in Cedar Falls, but certainly across this region and across this area. You'll see within the contract there are multiple consultants on this project, and sometimes people forget the scope of how large this actually is. So again, just as we say many times, somebody can't understand all the dynamics in, say, education or in other fields, they have consultants that'll come in to be able to focus in on environmental needs, the theater with acoustical sound and acoustical needs, coming in with landscape design. You'll see that there's an additional cost for a pool consultant, which we think is very, very important. So overall, with having this architectural team, and we've always been very cognizant and mindful of having that be a local architectural team, the base bid is 5.1% of the construction cost, not the project cost, the construction cost, with a total rate of 6.7%, because our recommendation is to include the pool so we understand what the underground utilities look like, so we can size things appropriately, because we know down the road there will more than likely be a pool at that location, as well as the AV consultant to help the district when you look at a building of 295,000 square feet, to help us plan out the AV needs as well as the installation of AV needs. And one of the things I am most happy about, and I think I've said this to Envision, that part of this contract and agreement is to help with the furniture bids, the furniture specs and specifications, because that is such a large scope and process going through that with the elementaries, that we're very pleased and honored to have them involved with this as well underneath this contract.
Thank you. Any questions?
So you mentioned that this is below what other rates? Can you give some examples of what this rate would typically be for hiring other architects and other projects?
So we've seen base bids typically in that 5.5 to 6.1 range for a base bid, not including all the consultants. So when you added an additional either 0.4, 0.5 up to about 0.8, 0.9 on top of this, you would see rates typically in that 7.1, 7.4 range. So we know that there are some buildings that are either under construction or have recently been built that maybe did not have some of the additional consultants, and also know that some of those districts wish they did. When you start talking about acoustics, that maybe the sound wasn't right, or the acoustics weren't right in the auditorium, or there wasn't adequate AV and access and across all the building because they didn't have some of their balancing right with their wireless connections. So we know that it's important, A, to do this right because we have one chance over the next 50 to 70 years, but we also know that it is lower than what we've seen with other districts with like-sized projects.
So our 6.7 would compare, you're saying that would be 7.1 to 7.4%.
That's what we've seen in other districts, but again, some of it depends on, some of the districts don't have all the different consultants. Here, I think we have 11 different consultants, if I remember correctly. So there are some times in this that, a high school might have 7 consultants, so that base number plus the consultants could be a little different, but when you do an apples-to-apples comparison, we know that we are right where we need to be.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the architect's contract?
I move that the Cedar Falls Board of Education approve the architectural contract with Envision Architects for design and oversight work associated with the new high school as presented.
Thank you, Susie. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Jeff Orvis. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on now to item I on the agenda, the approval of the resolution approval of the resolution supporting the proposed issuance of approximately $10 million in school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds.
It's a lot to say.
It is. I should have practiced it.
Thank you. Yes, as Dr. Petit had mentioned, it is exciting times, and we're able to move, this is one more step to move forward with the high school, and per our Iowa code, we're requesting approval of the resolution supporting the proposed issuance of the $10 million revenue bonds. This approval allows the district to begin working with our financial advisors and as well as to move forward with placement. The bond would be used, obviously, for the cost associated with the new high school, to include initial cost of the building, the design, the construction, and then improving of the sites. So, and interest rates are quite favorable at this moment, so obviously we want to continue to move that progress forward.
Right. Do we have any questions or comments?
gonna
I was
say,
going to say,
what-
I was going to do the motion first, but.
I can do that
Let's
first.
do the motion
All right.
first. Okay.
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Directors adopt the resolution supporting the proposed issuance of approximately $10 million of school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds as presented.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Susie. Now, questions or comments?
So is this going to raise anybody's property taxes, this particular issuance of bonds?
No.
Okay, because this is coming out of our SAVE funds. We're basically bonding against future revenues that come out of, from the sales tax option.
Correct. And this is through, this is 11-year bond, so this goes through 2029 with the 1-cent sales tax save dollars that are allocated from the 2019 legislature that when they enacted the save statewide.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
All right.
Just kind of I think it's good just to talk about, so this, are we going over budget with this? And the answer, I think, is no, but let's just talk about, if you can humor me just for a little bit. So we've got, our total budget for the high school is how much?
So when we went through the bonding process, we talked about a $112.9 million project for the high school. The $69.9 million was a general obligation bond that the voters approved in June, with $43 million coming from the 1-cent sales tax. So this is the first iteration of the 1-cent sales tax bonding request. There will be another $33 million coming in the future, but the challenge is when you have a project that is going to go through design development, bidding, and then construction, it's a 4-year plus project. So you have to be mindful on when you bond to A, take advantage of the right interest rates, B, to make sure that you don't get into what's called arbitrage when you actually, as a district, you can't hold money that is borrowed longer than a certain amount of time, otherwise you get penalized for that because you're accruing interest, and we're not to do that as an entity, is the best way to put that. So you have to be mindful of both arbitrage and trying to take advantage of when the dollars are needed for the project.
So this $10 million will take us approximately how long into the future before we'll need to bond either through a general revenue bond or the property tax bond?
We know that this will take us through probably the beginning, spring of next year. That will give us probably March or April. The next iteration we'll have to look and decide. We will have to pass what's called a revenue purpose statement. A revenue purpose statement is something that the legislature requires to say we're going to spend the dollars allocated by the state through 1-cent sales tax in a legal and lawful way, and you have to have people vote on that, which, again, that's always been the process with the revenue and the save dollars coming from the state of Iowa. We believe that interest rates right now are going to trend at least steady, potentially down. We know that you have higher interest rates typically with your revenue bonds because they're not as stable, even though in Iowa they're extremely stable when they look at the sales tax dollars generated, and that's always been an increase over the last 15 to 20 years historically. But you get a lower interest rate on your bonds that are general obligation bonds based upon property taxes. So we need to kind of wait to see where that trend line goes and determine if we're going to sell revenue bonds first or the general obligation bonds. And a lot of that is trying to forecast, working with our financial planner, Spear Financial, who will be here next week as we try to finalize the $10 million estimated revenue bonds. With the intent to be able to talk about some of that forecasting.
And so from a timeline, so obviously we've talked a lot this evening about an architect, a construction manager, getting money in. When do we think dirt's going to start moving?
Well, we know, and as we've kind of talked through the bond process, we have about a 9-month design process. So we are talking starting today with this, now that everything's finalized, moving forward through probably the beginning of spring. The bidding process is going to be probably a 2 to 3 month process, just because of the size and the scope and the number of packages that will be included in this and the detail associated with that. The hope is to have dirt moving at the end of summer, beginning of fall, but it's all dependent on when we can get everything finalized, because again, I think it's important to note we have one shot at this. We want to do it the best that we possibly can with all the information that we have available to us, with our teams, with our staff, with our parents, with our students, with our community, to make sure that design development is certainly as solid as we know it can be for the next 50 to 70 years.
And so the follow-up question, that would be when the dirt would hopefully, so a year from now, hopefully we've got dirt moving, and when do we actually expect that students will be walking through the doors, and when do we have, I know that everybody gets very nervous on that because it depends on weather and all kinds of different timelines, but is it, if that's fall of 2020, dirt starts moving, is it a 3-year, 2-year, 4-year?
Well, it's going to be at least a 36-month process, more than likely, by the time we look at the dirt moving, and so it's going to depend on when we can get into the site, when we can do the bidding. My hope would be that we can be done sometime in the 2023-2024 school year, which would probably, depending on timing, mean we could start in August of 24. If things go perfect, maybe 23, but probably 24 is more realistic as we look at finalizing the scope of the bidding and the design development. And I'm looking at the design team to make sure that's accurate.
Apparently a clarification is needed.
That's what that means.
Hi, I'm Brian Sanderman with Envision. Just a little clarification. So potentially that dirt could start moving if we would do an early bid package as part of the process. And what that means in architect speak and construction speak would mean we would be getting through design and then be comfortable enough with where we're at to issue documents to start moving grading and doing that kind of work and make that happen. That also means you're going to have potentially separate bid packages. You'll have an early bid package and then the rest of the documents. And as Andy was speaking to, that kind of depends on our construction manager and what they feel timing-wise. We've been kind of looking at that in terms of how the construction can consistently flow. It doesn't do us a lot of good to start moving dirt in the fall and then sort of stop work when it gets cold. So they're looking at that 2024 date, and does it make more sense just to start in the spring, the following spring, instead of moving dirt in the fall, start moving dirt in the spring and be able to work that through and still meet that 2024 date. So we still got to do a little exploration of that, but it also is discussion of whether or not we do one bid package, and then you would see pricing on that one bid package versus dividing up those bid packages and understanding those dollars. So a few other things go into that.
Thank you, Brian.
And I think we could rush through design development, but I'm fearful that we might look back and regret that decision if we say we want design development done in 4 months, 5 months, without making sure we do that in a mindful approach. So,
Yeah, and we're probably looking a little closer to 10, 12 months of design time, actually, when we get through the process of each phase. So there's the early phases of design where we're really meeting with the staff and the rest of you on that and designing the building, and then there's some time to actually create the documents for bidding as well. So.
Yeah, obviously, it's a balance between getting it right and the community's anxiousness after approving this and
Yes.
that they want to have the benefit of it, so.
I think just as a reminder too, for Aldrich Elementary, we did an early bid package, and that was within our best interest at that time because of timing and when they could actually access that site early in the spring. So it allowed us to move forward with some of the underground utilities early summer, midsummer. Again, here it's going to depend on timing.
Thank you. We saw in the update communications report, the conversations happening with some of the input around design. Can you give us just a brief overview of what that timeline looks like, how often those occur, who's facilitating, and what are maybe a couple of the takeaways from those conversations?
Sure, and we'll come back probably, we'll be seeing more of you as we do that, so we can give you updates and be communicating with Janelle as well. So today, like Janelle said, was kind of our first kickoff day. We kicked off with an all-staff meeting this morning, bright and early at 7:25. And actually, the teachers were there talking, excited to go, so that was great to see. And then we met with a handful of departments, I think 6 departments today, and then we're meeting with the rest of them throughout the week. And then, as Janelle mentioned, community groups as well. So what we're really trying to do this week is about listening to their needs and giving them some questions to really stretch their minds a little bit and think a little bit about what the space can be, and then talk about really what their needs are. And then we'll have another series of process of these meetings that are about every 3 weeks or so, meeting with staff. We're going to have steering committee meetings, which would have board members on them that is soon to be following that as well. Those are probably more in every 1 to 2 week process, just keeping everyone up to date. So we're just kind of getting the big ball rolling, and then you'll be hearing more communication and that dialogue happening.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it's kind of like a funnel. We're at the widest end of the funnel right now, trying to get all the input and discussions, and then we're going to continue to refine that down to the end product. So with a lot of energy in the room this morning at 7:25, and I think there's a lot of excitement about what the future holds and certainly what the design development's going to look like.
Yeah, so we really have about 8 months of design that's really kind of getting that input.
Any other questions for Brian
I
or Andy?
Just a quick comment. I just want to say I really appreciate this process tremendously. I had an opportunity last week to take a tour of a high school in Southern Illinois, Marion, which opened in 2012, and that I walked around with the facilities manager, and he told me all of the things that he would do differently. And his kind of underlying idea was that there wasn't enough communication, there wasn't enough conversation, there was not enough input from the various important entities, and so this process that you're talking about is critical to not be looking back 7 years after the school is built and say, oh, if only we had. So thank you for the process.
Yes, 50 years, we don't want to look back. We don't want to look back 5 years to say, we wish we would have done something different. So, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table, and it's a roll call vote.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Hassman?
Yes.
Dr. Heiserkamp?
Yes.
Ms. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Orvis?
Yes.
Ms. Walpert?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion approved. Thank you. All right, moving on now to the approval of the board goals. A committee met. You'll have to help me remember. It was Sasha, it was Susie. Alan, you came later, right? The 3?
Correct.
Okay, the 3. So the board goals are in front of you. I'd like you to kind of just, let's have a general discussion about these, because these will be your board goals for this next year. The one thing I would like to do, though, is before we walk out of here tonight, and we've not done this in a while, I'd like to at least get a couple people to champion each goal. And I'm not saying so that it's your responsibility to present the information back to the board. I think it's just important that you help us keep this process going. So if we go a while and there's not anything happening on that board goal, that you're willing to ask the question, what are we doing? What do we need to do? Because we've chosen these goals, and they should be important to the board. So we just want to make sure that we continue to have progress on them. So with that, I'll open it up to discussion. You love the board goals and you don't need any discussion, is that it? Or we have a motion to approve the board goals, and then we'll have a second, and then we can have discussion. So let's have a motion to approve.
I move to
Okay.
approve the board goals
All right.
1920.
All right, do I have a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Now can we talk about the board goals? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. If I could just interject a little bit. We always build our goals as a district, and this goes for district, building level, collaborative team level, individual level. We have student achievement goal areas, culture and climate, and then our PLC focus, because that centers around our collaboration and our professional learning communities. So I think it was important to note that through the discussion, we have some new goal subsets underneath each one of those, and I think it's important to note. I just wanted to highlight those, if that's okay. Underneath the student achievement goal, we have the second bullet down, because the first bullet was kind of an addition from last year that talked about the pre-bond referendum. Now it's talking about the finalization, the building plans, the new Cedar Falls High School. The second one is one that we tweaked based on the committee's discussion, really focused on surveying graduates 1 year out and 5 years removed to really hear from them. What are some of the programs, the supports, the aspects that help them prepare for their next steps? We think 1 year out, we know about 90% of our students typically go into a 2-year or 4-year college pathway. So sometimes looking at 1 year, that could be a little bit more yes, things are good. Yes, we're pleased. Yes, we're doing well. 5 years out, we're hoping to have a little bit more perspective over either into a new career, into a new role, something different than maybe going into a college setting. So we're hoping to get a lot of information surrounding that. We did, underneath culture and climate, put down as well, just so everybody here's aware and recommend, participate in an article review each month where different board members selects that article based on best practice, area of interest, or relevant work that you see as best practice in education. So something that you think is going to be beneficial for the entire board. So maybe in December, Jeff Orvis that's his month, so he would send out an advance the article, and then that's when we'd have the discussion about it. January would be somebody else, and continue to kind of rotate through that. We also put down, which I think is a wise decision, we know that with the upcoming board elections, different from what they've been in the past. Typically they are in September. Now they're going to be in November, to be able to do something with team building, either a strengths finder or a DISC profile, but something that helps to bring on new board members really in the middle of the school year, middle of our calendar year as a school district and as a school board team, to be able to help get to know each other better, to be able to work on some of those attributes and knowledge-based components. And then I think underneath PLCs, pretty similar, but trying to get earlier into the PTO, PTA meetings, as well as the PLC staff time visits and school day visits earlier than what we have potentially the last year or 2 years. So that was just kind of an overview of some of the discussion.
Can I just add, under the culture and climate, the second bullet down is the joint meeting with the Cedar Falls City Council and the CFU Board of Directors, and that's something that was on there before that we haven't really done with great intention, but I think now with the high school on the horizon, where there's a lot of opportunity to have some really meaningful conversations about what that'll look like for our community as a whole. And so I think that conversation needs to really happen this year.
I think the one thing, to your point, is that I know Andy has great communication with the city of Cedar Falls and CFU, so he meets with them regularly. So that's important. But I do know last year that we tried to set a date and time to meet with them, and it just wasn't conducive to our calendars. So, so even though we didn't have it happen, at least we tried to do it. And now that we're talking about it a little bit earlier in the year, and with the high school in the horizon, I'm sure that we will find a time that will be convenient for both of us. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Any other questions about yes, Jeff?
Not a question, just a comment on goal 3, and that is, you had asked us to perhaps champion one of these. To me, at number 3, the goal of community visibility should be all of our responsibility, and I'm not sure that any one of us should probably take that on by ourselves. And I know in the past that we've done, I think, a pretty good job of getting out and visiting the schools and talking to staff, those sorts of things.
I agree, and what I really mean is, for instance, I'm going to use Susie as an example, because Susie, for the last couple of years, has really been working with Dr. Patty to get those dates, along with our PTO and PTA presidents. So it would make sense that Susie might say, well, I will champion this goal, just to keep it moving forward, to pay attention to the schedule. If there are snow days like last year, to figure out what those makeup days might be for us, and so it would be that, yes,
All right,
it is
all right,
our
thank you, that makes sense.
responsibility, but it's, Susie helps keep the ball rolling, so.
Unless you don't want me to, Jeff.
No,
Okay.
by all means, go
I
ahead.
almost thought he
That
was
Excel
volunteering.
document, I know.
Yes. So when you look at those, are there any that you would just say, yes, I'd like to be a part of it? And it can be 2 people, it doesn't have to just be 1. Or if you're more comfortable emailing Andy about it after this meeting, that's fine. But sometime in the near future, I would like to see someone's names behind these.
So we should just contact Andy. I like all 3 of them, but I will narrow my focus and share. But, so Andy, just email you or let you know, or?
Yep, and I could put out maybe some kind of a Google document too, just to be able to have something that shows who might want to champion or who has an interest in each of the areas.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank
And I appreciate the continuity of goal 3. I know that's successfully continued to meet and engage with PTOs. I think it's a great goal to have ongoing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been good. Okay, let's see, let's vote on this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on now to the approval of the superintendent's goals.
Again, you'll see within the board packet, there are 3 different areas: student achievement, PLC, and culture and climate. We align those across our district in each of those areas. A couple different things I think to highlight. Student achievement, different things that we're really focused on is continued STEM expansion and science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as some of the CAPS experiences. I think we're really at the tipping point where not only can we enhance and grow that program, I think our goal is to provide those opportunities for every student that graduates from the Cedar Falls Community School District to have those 4 C's, those critical thinking, learning opportunities, but really those real life, authentic experiences, and to be able to expand that potentially into a little bit more of a regional model. And Janelle did a nice job highlighting some of that work, as well as some partners that are coming on board. And we think that can be a really exciting model, not only for students, but our entire region with our business and attracting and retaining high-quality labor force. Underneath PLCs, it's continuing to focus on some of the refining work that we do with our administrative council and our administrators. We're excited about some of the work we're doing with collective commitments, revisiting our mission and vision. What are our goals? So everything within our collaborative teams and our professional learning communities align systemically. Again, that's one of the big things that we really are focused on as we've done some restructuring, and how do we look at the system pre-K through 12 to ensure consistency and to ensure the experiences students have throughout our system is going to be systemic in nature. Culture and climate, some different things. We have a wonderful well, we have multiple wonderful aspects within our community. One of them is Channel 15. The hope is to continue to focus on our parent engagement, our parent university, some of our partners in ed, as well as some of the work that we know we want to continue to showcase through social media, as well as the work on the Cedar Falls High School. So a lot of different components here, but certainly aligning with the work that we know we need to do, but have built upon some in the past as well.
Thank you, Andy. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's goals?
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Betty. Moving on now to the superintendent's report.
Well, we have down the next board meeting, September 23rd, and we have down the information reports of ACT and Senior Year Plus. We have our Senior Year Plus. We know where our students have attended past college graduation, or excuse me, high school graduation, and what their pathways are. We do not have ACT scores back yet, so that is a lot later than typical and normal, so we're not exactly sure why. We've reached out and made some contacts. So that informational report could look a little differently than what it has in the past. It's always kind of a really nice opportunity to stop and look to see achievement of students, where they're at, how they compare across the state. We just don't know if that's going to happen on September 23rd now because of that delay in some of our ACT results. October 14th, Certified Annual Report, which is our CAR. I just wanted to make sure as a reminder, not only for board members here, but those potentially that might run coming up in November. There is an IASB state convention, the Iowa Association of School Boards, and that is November 20th and 21st. And we always typically have all 7 board members that attend that. It's a great learning opportunity. It's a great, I think, opportunity to build teamwork and camaraderie and build that team approach as a board team. But that's important to note those different dates.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Pattee?
Just maybe, yeah, just, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to ask if we have heard anything back as far as you mentioned ACT. What about the the ISASP?
Yeah, so ISASP is
Easy
what it is. Yes, ISASP is supposed to be back about mid-October. So there was a state board meeting tomorrow, actually, and at that time they're going to do some of their cut scores and approve some of those different benchmarks that go along with the new assessment, statewide assessment. So knock on wood, mid-October.
Okay.
Good question. Jeff?
So you've implemented a new organizational structure.
Correct.
I guess, can you just kind of talk to us about, I guess remind everyone what that looks like, kind of what the fundamental change was there, and then just how that's working?
Yeah, so with the retirement of our Director of Secondary Education, Dan Conrad, which we all know and certainly miss, we had the opportunity to look at how, if any, is there ways to rethink some of the approaches that we've had. We've always had an elementary director and a secondary director for many, many years. And sometimes that had great opportunities, but it also sometimes limited us when we focused on systemic initiatives. So we have gone to, without adding staff, restructuring, to have a pre-K through 12 Director of Student Services, a pre-K through 12 Director of Enrichment, because we know some of our data has shown over time those students that are our highest achieving students when you look at growth data, because your highest achievers actually, and this is part of the statewide assessments and statewide grading model that they've put out, is based on anticipated growth. And there's 5 bands that have always been underneath Iowa assessment. And we're fortunate, because of our wonderful staff, our parents, and our students, to have many students in that highest band as the highest achievers in the state. What happens is those students are expected to grow at a much higher rate than maybe a student within that lowest band. So even though a student in the lowest band is making expected growth, they don't necessarily catch up to their peers. So we want to really continue to focus on systemically pre-K through 12 with this new model, not only on how do we support students that might be struggling, how do we make sure we're enhancing those opportunities for those highest achievers with unique opportunities like CAPS experiences, with other projects, and with enrichments to really bring forth those opportunities. That allowed us then to move Pam into associate superintendent role to help oversee and work directly with our principals and that instructional leadership model to ensure that we are continuously focusing on learning and what we do as a system for all kids, for our staff, for our community. So 2.5 weeks into it, really well.
Any other questions for Dr. Petit? Good questions. Hearing none. Questions or comments or concerns from board members?
I just have a quick comment. The Iowa Association of School Boards Legislative Resolution Committee met last month, and our board had put forward 4 priorities for our district, and 3 of those priorities made it to the top bunch, so those will be addressed, and they include mental health, which came out at the very top statewide. School funding policy came in second. That wasn't one of our priorities, but that is Resolution 18, and that one was put forward. Supplemental state aid and preschool. So those will be the 4 top priorities for the 2020 legislative session. So thank you for the input that you all provided.
Thank you, Sasha, for your representation, too. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
It's been moved by Susie. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Jeff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you to you and I and Upper Iowa students for being here this evening. So thank you.